to turn on the camera. Recording, yeah. Thank you. I believe that we can continue. First of all, let me mention, hello, Francesco. Francesco is here. So we are actually four people from the team of Row for Change, which is a group of several international partners who are researching together how to use role-playing and LARP for educational purposes. And it's very much worth to mention that we are sponsored by Erasmus+. So thanks to the Erasmus+, we can be doing this right now, and you can be participating in it for free. I will give a moment to my colleagues to introduce ourselves. I will just say that I'm Vojtěch, I'm from Czech Republic. I represent Inspire organization. I am an educator, facilitator, project coordinator. I am also an enthusiast when it comes to live action role-playing and RPGs in general. And it somehow happened almost by accident that I started to use those tools for education. Actually, lately, I'm using those tools for education very actively. And I will pass word to Simone.
Thank you, Vojtěch. Hi, I'm Simone. I'm from Italy, from Rome, and I'm working for the Meta cooperative, partners of the project. And I'm a facilitator in the youth encounters funded by Erasmus foundings. And I really like to be involved in role play activity when it comes to both private life, but also educational things. Thank you.
Thank you, Simone. Ilias?
Hello. So I am Ilias. I'm representing Roes Cooperativa from Greece. And I'm a project manager and an entrepreneur. I'm here with you today to be the technical support and making sure that everybody is feeling okay in this electronic environment that we are. So yeah, if you need anything, you can text me on Zoom. Yeah, thank you.
Francesco, would you also like to say something about yourself?
Sure. Just like Simone, I work with the Meta Cooperativa. I used to work with the role-playing game stuff, and it's a kind of daily thing. And I'm responsible for the IO1, the manual, and that is the main output of this Role for Change project. And yes, I'm also an enthusiast regarding all the fields that regards the role-playing game stuff. And yes, that's pretty much it.
Yeah, you very nicely talk about the booklet, or how do we call it? Basically, within a few months, all of you will have an opportunity to read this PDF, maybe also printed file, where we collect all different information on how to facilitate role-playing and LARPs games. And there is also a number of specific activities which you can be using with your target groups. It's also maybe worth it to mention that at September, a training course in Italy is going to happen. So if you would like to have this experience on site, you are very much welcome to apply and to come. And for now, let me just mention something about the questions. Basically, I will start very soon with the presentation which I prepared for today. If you will have any questions during my presentation, feel free to turn on the speaker and ask straight away. It's also a possibility just to put your question to the chat. Might be that I will not notice it straight away, but Ilias is here to support me and to tell me if I'm missing something. And we can slowly get into it. I will start sharing my screen. Here we go. Now, let's start directly here. As you remember, we are giving you assignments at the end of every webinar. These assignments are voluntarily. It's for you, for your own experience, to send it to us. This time we collected only one, but I would like to speak about it very briefly as well. Basically, I'm very happy that you decided to send us something. And I forgot which one of you sent it, but he sent 2 documents. One of them was working on the preparation for the role-playing activity. Second of them was preparation for the LARP activity. Both of them are very nice. Both of them, for me, looks like a great example of brainstorming. I would like to point basically two things. I was very much amazed when I read all the possible questions for the reflection which can happen after game. What I think is that this is a little bit too big of a number of questions. If you will be asking all these questions, you will spend, I mean, 2 hours just by reflecting. So for the effectivity itself, it can be worth it to select just a few questions which you really want to use. And which question to choose, it should be very much connected to the learning goal. So here at the beginning, we ask you to set up for yourself a learning goal of the activity. Honestly, these learning goals can be very broad, because in non-formal education, we are having a number of different opportunities. And it's basically about you as a facilitator to choose what do you want to focus on during this session. And when you choose this learning goal you want to achieve, it also shows you what type of questions you should be focused during the reflection itself. I think that's it from my side. I will ask my colleagues if any of them would like to add something to the assignments.
All good from my side.
Same.
Yeah,
it's good to have that many questions. It's good to have that many questions that can be turned into different methods and activities.
Maybe also I will give space to our viewers if they are having any specific questions about this assignment. And if not,
hello.
Hello, Eleni.
Hello. I want to ask you something maybe really basic, but I don't know the difference between LARP and I don't remember the other PGR or something like that. Thank you.
LARP and role playing. Yes, very good. We have been addressing this during the first webinar. It's also possible to find this webinar online, but I will explain it very briefly in here. RPG is a shortcut for role-playing games. Mostly we are talking here about tabletop role-playing games. That means the group of people sitting at the table and co-creating a story together according to specific rules. When we are talking about LARP, live action role-playing games, then it's something very similar, but this time it's fully acted. It means people are not sitting at the table, but they are literally moving in a space. They are acting out certain roles. Francesco, do you want to add there something? Okay. Yeah, I will very briefly share our website, so also everybody can see where to find the recordings. Here we go. So this is the website of our project, roll4change.eu. Here is the webinars that are coming. We are at this moment at the webinar 3. And here is the webinar 2, webinar 1. If you're going to click on these buttons, it's going to give you recording from the previous session. So you can also refresh your memory as you need. Okay. I'm going to move to the presentation. Can you see presentation? Good. So today's webinar is focused on the topic how to facilitate educational LARP or role-playing games. We have already been doing the feedback on the previous assignment. I can also tell you that this time a new assignment is coming, which is building upon the previous one. So we will come back to it. But for now, I will slowly delve into the topic how to facilitate an edu-LARP session, how to keep it safe. And then I'm going to pass the word to my colleague Simone, who is going to tell you about what competencies you might need when you are facilitating the LARP session. As you might notice, I'm focusing it on the LARP, not so much on the tabletop role playing. Why? Because I'm of a belief that facilitating LARP is a little bit harder, a little bit more challenging. And it's more challenging because LARP is more challenging for the players as well. Basically, when people are playing tabletop RPGs, they are sitting at the table and they are talking, which is a little bit less exposing, a little bit less involving than when you are literally playing with your whole body as you are doing inside of the LARP. So therefore, LARP is bringing its own specific challenges. But whatever I will be talking about, you can take and you can apply it on facilitating tabletop RPG sessions as well. Maybe it's not going to be exactly the same, but it will be very similar. So I will be talking about one LARP which I have implemented a few years ago back in Latvia. The LARP implementation of the LARP has several steps. It starts with the planning, then with the preparation of the activity, then people are on the spot, they need to land, they need to get to know the activity itself. Then there is a space for the game, and then there is a space for reflection and evaluation, how everything goes. So now we are standing in the planning step, in the first phase for everything. If you are a facilitator, you start at this stop, at this point. For me, I was starting with the LARP, Czech LARP, which is called Who Plays. It's actually a little bit tricky to translate it to English. It's based on the Czech idiom, so this is not the best translation, but this is the best translation I have been able to provide. It's not my LARP, it's a LARP which have been created by my friends and who gave me permission to implement it. Basically, this LARP is for 8 players. So I knew that when I'm going to play it, I need exactly 8 participants. It is a LARP about children imagination, but it's also a LARP about children cruelty, basically about bullying. And the whole scene is happening in the foster house. So the players, the participants who came to play the LARP knew that they are going to take the role of the foster kids, of the kids who has been abandoned in the foster house. As I mentioned, I have been in Latvia when I have been implementing this thing. I came to decision that I want to do this, and I started to prepare everything. First, I need to figure out where I am going to do it. Then I need to know that I'm having all the equipments, etc. So I read very carefully through the script of the game. And then I also created a certain trailer, certain introduction for the game. So that's already the phase of the preparation. Planning is the part when I'm getting to know all the facts, and then I start to do actions, and that's already the preparation part. Inside of the preparation part, I'm basically promoting the event, that this is going to happen. And I started to prepare the potential participants on what is coming. In a sense, I created a trailer, just like if I would be inviting people for a movie. Just like in the trailer, I needed to attract them. And just like in the trailer, I couldn't tell them what exactly is going to happen because they would not be interested to come anymore. I created a Facebook event. Inside of the Facebook event, I created a poster. I put some description. Part of this description are those very practical things. So where is it going to happen? At what time? How much is it going to cost? What people need to bring with themselves? And then I also needed to prepare the place itself for people to come. So I needed to be sure that the place is fitting to my needs, that I have all the requisites, props, that I have a music ready, that I have the materials for people to read, and that I also have a backup plan. Backup plan when we are implementing LARP is very important. Basically, when we are playing an activity, when we are having specific number of players, in my case, it was 8 players, and one of them will not come, I cannot play. The game cannot happen. It's ruined for everybody. So I needed to know that I have somebody in my mind who can replace this missing person last minute. It's also very useful to know that the place is saved. What happened to me is that I arrived on the spot, and somebody who owned the place and who didn't know that the LARP is happening just came there with his friends, and they wanted to play some board games. Fortunately, he was very friendly, and he just gave us the space, and we could continue according to plan. Here you can see a screenshot from the Czech website, where they are calling, where they are organizing a lot of different LARPs. This is a good example on how to do these little trailers. Basically, there is always some picture which is attracting, which is creating the atmosphere of the game. Then there is the name of the game, and there is a short description what the game is about, without actually revealing anything. Here there is the person who is organizing the activity, and here is how many people is needed, including gender division, and how much it's going to cost, how long it's going to take, and this is just the registration button. Of course, this group, they are organizing LARPs for a long time. It's not necessary for you to create something like this, but it's a good signpost, good thing, like it provides an idea what you need to have ready when you are to prepare a LARP. By the way, if I would be talking too fast, let me know. When we prepared everything we needed for the LARP, we can move to the implementing the LARP, to the phase which I called landing and introduction of this activity. So basically what will happen to you as a facilitator, that certain number of people will gather on the spot. Maybe those people know themselves from before, maybe they know you, maybe they are completely new. Especially if you are organizing LARP for the first time, there is a great chance that you will have complete newbies, both to you and to the LARP. That's also what happened to me, that people gathered there who I have never seen before. And you can imagine what is actually happening when completely random people are gathering on the spot. There is a lot of social awkwardness, this kind of anxieties in people. They don't know what is going to happen, etc. So it's very important to provide them a comfortable space in which the fears can go down. It is useful to have some refreshment on the spot. No, not heavy alcoholic drinks. I would say beer maximum, but water, soft drinks, maybe some chips, whatever, depends on the setting. But it definitely can help to people to be more comfortable. It's also very useful to inform them about the practical things which you already know. For example, that it's going to take 3 hours, that it would be lovely that they are not using their phones for these 3 hours. Even if you already announced these things before on the Facebook or through email or whatever channel you gathered them through, it is useful to remind it again, because it helps to people to calm down. When people know what is coming, it's easier. I very often follow the steps of the Maslow pyramid. I assume that you have heard about Maslow pyramid in the past. Basically, on the bottom step, there is this thing which goes to the physical need. This is warmth, food, water, toilet. Yeah, basically in every LARP, people will be busy with where they can go to bathroom. So it actually helps to be busy with these very basic things, because it's easy to figure them out. People are going to ask for them anyway, and it provides them comfort. Second need is this feeling of security, safety. So basically for us as facilitators of LARPs, it is very important to create a feeling that people are welcomed, that they don't have to be afraid. Because especially if they are new to this game, they will be afraid when they are coming. It's very useful to put on some icebreakers. It can be soft talk, it can be some small activity, whatever what is going to help them. Basically, it can be any sort of warm-up activities, which breaks the contact barrier, which helps them to get to know each other, which creates the friendly atmosphere. Me personally, I'm not a big fan of icebreakers, but in the same time, I can say that using them for the people who are completely new to the thing, it can be beneficial, because it helps them to get together faster. It's also useful to use type of activities which already support the mood of the game itself. So in our case, it was a game about the imagination and about bullying. So we were providing the short activities based on the improv theater assignments. One of the activities was grab whatever what is around you and use it as a prop. So basically, if I screamed, now you hold sword, they just needed to grab anything around and pretend that it is a sword. And this we were doing for 5 minutes. Then in the next step, we have invited people, hey, now you will be co-creating a story. And your task, your group assignment is that you will always say one sentence, and you as a group need to create the whole fairy tale. This type of assignments help them to land on the spot, and in the same time, it helped them to prepare themselves for the game that is coming. Some games already have these workshops described. In other cases, you need to be creative and come up with the activities which you simply find fitting. Well, after gathering people on the spot, after informing them what is coming, after playing these warm-up activities, it's usually time to go to rules. Why I prefer to go to rules a little bit later? Because rules can be complicated. In LARPs, the rules are very often simple, but still their explanation can take around 20 minutes. And it requires that people are present, people are focused, people are ready for the thing. That's why I think it is better to first kind of warm them up, and only after that to go to the rules. When it comes to scripted LARPs, where everybody is having a sheet with their character, usually 1.5 page, where they need to read something about themselves, players also need time to learn their characters. So this is important for you when you are evaluating how long it's going to take. Let's say that the LARP activity itself is going to take 1.5 hours, but you need 20 minutes to welcome people on the spot, 1 hour to do warm-up activities, another hour for them to explain the rules and to memorize their characters, and only after that you are going to the game itself. So the whole process can be much longer than you would estimate at the beginning. So let's say that at this moment all the players understand the rules, they read their characters, and the game can begin. What do you do as a facilitator? Basically, you actively observe what is happening. You, first of all, are checking that people are keeping the rules. You also are very present to see if there is some intervention from your side needed. It happened to me during different LARP activity that the things went a little bit astray. So what I did, that I very quickly created for myself a character, and I entered the game inside of the character to influence in which direction the game is going. This is not very common. This is not needed all the time, but it can happen. You are also, your role is also to observe very carefully what is happening, because you can use it later on when the game is over, when you will be reflecting upon what the participants did. Then it's good to work with the specific things which happen during the game. You can ask about them, you can pinpoint them, and it can really be helpful for recognizing the learnings that are happening during the game. I would say that for LARP, it is always useful to work in couple. It is not necessary. Most of the LARPs I have been doing, I implemented them myself without anybody to help me. But if you are two, then one of you can always focus on the technical parts, for example, playing the music or that the props are on the spot, while the second person can be always focused on the participants, on the players, how things are going. Okay, we play the game, we finish the game. It's time to go into the reflection. But before we go into the reflection, players usually need breathe out, to have a break. Smoking break is very useful to send them for a cigarette, to grab some fresh drink, to shake off whatever characters they have been playing so far. And only after this stepping out of the experience, because until now they have been playing certain character and they need to leave the character behind. So only after they step out of this experience, you can move to reflecting about the whole experience. And once again, you are facilitating the process. As a facilitator of the process, your task is to actively observe what is happening, actively ask questions, and also actively use silence. Very often it is better not to say much, especially when people reach certain flow, and let the group dynamic to handle themselves. Or if you see that it's going in the direction where it's not supporting the learning, you as a facilitator can always step in and put it on the track where you need it. And finally, there is an opportunity for, there is a question, yes? Or no? Okay. Well, if there is a question, please ask or write it to the chat. Only after the reflection part, there is the time to go to the evaluation. Evaluation is not here for participants that much. It is here for you. As a facilitator, this is an opportunity for you to discover what is not working, what is working. What is not working, you leave out for the future, and what is working, you are building upon, you are making it bigger. It can be useful to ask participants about their opinions also from another reason. Basically, people are very critical beings. They always have an opinion. They always have the need to share. They want to be listened. My personal advice to you as a facilitator is don't take things they are saying way too personally. Basically, there will be all the time somebody who will be complaining, somebody who will have a feeling that they know better. Mostly they don't. You as a facilitator are usually having better awareness about what is happening. It is always good to listen to what people have to say, but it doesn't mean that you need to apply everything what they are saying, because very often what players believed would be great could not actually work inside of the game. This was about implementing LARP activity. Before I will go to the next phase, let me ask you again if there are any questions to this. I get a feeling that I throw a lot of information at you in a very short time.
Is the facilitator in LARP, can we call the facilitator in LARP a game master, or it's a different term?
Well, the game master term is coming from tabletop RPGs.
Okay.
And in LARP, we are mostly not using it. So I would consider it a different term.
Okay.
Okay. Then let's talk also a little bit about the safety inside of the LARP activities. This is for me a very crucial thing, keeping it safe. It's yeah, one of the key roles which you as an organizer are holding. And the safety is having several steps. The most obvious, the most logical step is physical safety. So the physical safety is important, especially when you are playing like LARPs for the big groups. As we mentioned in the LARP #1, there can be LARPs for like small-scale LARPs for 8 players, as I was implementing in Latvia, but there can be also LARP for 50 players, for 500 players, for 5,000 players, really massive LARPs. And more people are present, bigger chance somebody is going to get hurt. So as an organizer, you are putting their safety standards, and it's also your task to evaluate and to check that these safety standards are met. If we are talking about so-called battles, when people are using softened weapons, you should have very specifically described how long weapons people can use, how it should be softened. You should also check every weapon which is inside of the game, because if you will not, some weapon which is dangerous can get inside of the game, and then bigger chance that people get hurt. Many of these safety standards are already present somewhere online. There is more system existing, so you can just Google and choose the one which fits you the best. The same goes for post-apocalyptic LARPs, where they are using airsoft weapons and similar things. So here, once again, you should have some agreements about which type of weapons is okay, which is too dangerous. You should be sure that people are wearing goggles, etc., etc. You can also, if you are concerned about your personal safety as a facilitator, then you can ask people to sign liability waiver. Basically, before anybody joins the game, they sign a paper that they are entering the game on their own danger, which could a little bit protect you from the legal perspective. I mean, I have never had to do it in the past, but if you are doing something massive, it can be definitely a useful thing. And of course, first aid kit is always useful, especially like if you have bigger group, first aid kit is necessity. If you are having a smaller group, you are mostly not so concerned about their physical safety, but much more concerned about their emotional safety, because these smaller LARPs are usually dramatic. And very often they are dealing with the heavy topics. Not necessarily, there are comedy LARPs where there is nothing serious happening. But with these so-called chamber LARPs, very often we are dealing about a topic as bullying, as mentioned before, or homosexuality, or domestic violence, etc., etc. These things can be potentially triggering for a player, even more if they experience something like this in the past. For that reason, I consider it useful to prepare a list of triggers which can happen during the game. It can be useful to put this list of trigger to players' awareness already inside of the trailer, already inside of the Facebook event. So people are informed in advance and they know that, hey, there is a trigger rape and this is really not for me, so I will not be applying for the activity. It's always useful to repeat these triggers on the spot when the group is already gathered, that you as a facilitator are aware that people don't have a problem with this. You can do it in the safe way. Basically, if you have a list of triggers, you ask people to close their eyes, you read the list of triggers, and if somebody has a trigger from this word, they raise their hand, and then you approach them in private and just discuss with them. Can be that the player decide that it's safer for them not to play, can be that they decide to play anyway. Even if the game doesn't have any obvious triggers, you can still check with players if they themselves think that they could get triggered by something. They should have an opportunity to approach you in the private and check with you, share with you, hey, this is what I'm worried about. Do I have a reason to be worried? If you are the facilitator, you are guarding the safety, and therefore you are there to serve the players and to support them with whatever is coming. And what can also happen during the game are triggers which nobody see coming. So, for example, it happened to us that I have been playing this experimental LARP about dancing, and there was just some talk about the car crash. We didn't even have been part of the car crash. It was very much side note. But one of the players experienced car crash 2 years ago, and yeah, it just didn't do him well, and he started to shake. Like for him, it was a very short attack. It took just 1 minute when he was a little bit out of the game. But I'm mentioning this as an example that some things we basically cannot predict. Some things just can happen. And as a facilitators, we should be ready that those things can happen. Of course, first of all, for the beginning, it might be useful for the new facilitators to start with games which are not so emotionally demanding. So focus yourself on the comedies or on the LARP activities which are not going into this serious topic. But anyway, if you are a professional facilitator, most probably you already have experience with supporting people who are getting into hard situations. We are also having some guidelines on how to behave during the LARP activity in case that somebody actually is getting triggered. So that's our next slide. Basically, we are having these 3 principles. One of them is if somebody is playing the role, but something happened, something is going straight for them, they should always have an opportunity for a short break. As a facilitator, you can always inform them before that, hey, it's okay to step out of the game for 1 minute. Usually we are using this sign, hand behind the head. If somebody is doing this, it means that they are out of the game for a time. And only when they put the hand down, it's a sign to other players that they are ready to play again. There is also the rule red stop, which I consider the most important safety rule of the LARPs in general. I have never experienced it personally, but we always, in every LARP activity, we are mentioning it. Basically, if a player got triggered, it's something which is not okay is happening to them. Every player has a right to scream red stop. In a moment they scream it, the game is stopped. There is stop interrupted, usually not finished. If the game is to be finished, people meet again another time, but for now the game is stopped, so we can address whatever is happening there. And finally, there are regulators. Regulators are useful mostly for the battle LARPs or the type of LARPs when we are going more into the physical contact. And basically, it's a tool for players how to enjoy the game as much as possible. There can be a regulator that the players scream, slow down, which is a sign to the other players that they should be a little bit less aggressive inside of the game. And the example of the opposite regulator would be give me more, which is sign to the players that they are ready to take more aggressivity inside of the game. And these things are very individual. Every participant is having different boundaries. Somebody is ready to get very touchy, very physical, very emotional inside of the game. Someone else is not ready for it. So those tools are helping them to find the appropriate balance so they can be all playing in the safe and pleasant way. Francesco, do you want to add something to regulators?
Well, I think you covered most of the main topics, but of course it's best to keep in mind that it's a very huge world, and there are thousands of associations that do LARPs and activities that do LARP, and each very LARP is really different. So the main rules, the main things that Vojtěch talked about safety, I think they are quite common, and I think they are essential for every circumstance.
Thank you. Okay, I'm running out of time, so I will very quickly run through the last LARP. Last LARP is about the boundaries. From my experiences, LARPs are more fun when people really put themselves into them. When they put themselves physically, emotionally, fully, it really can create experience which nobody will ever forget. But of course, the more you are putting yourself to the game, the more you are raising the danger that the boundary is crossed, that some trigger is going to happen, that somebody is going to get hurt, etc., etc. So for you, as an organizer, you are basically having a responsibility. You are having a responsibility to set up the boundaries which are true for the whole group. You are saying this is allowed, this is not. And then players should have an opportunity to make individual agreements in between each other, so they can make the game more interesting for themselves. To give you an example, we have been running a game on a boat when we have a part of the game was sex. It was very important for the characters that they are having this love affairs in between each other. It was adding the spiciness to the game, the drama, etc. There was some cheating in between characters involved. But the organizers told us very clearly, if you want to play out that you are kissing somebody, you are going to touch them cheek on cheek. And if you want to act out a very passionate scene, sex scene, you are going to touch with your face on both cheeks. And this was the rule. This was the barrier which was given to us by organizers. But after they also said, if you want, you can go to other players and make individual agreements. So basically what I did, I was playing a character which was a lady killer. Based on the script I slept with the half of the women who were on the boat. So basically I went to every one of these players and I told them, hey, I have this idea. Pretty much, I just want to make it all more theatrically visible. So would you be okay that I will, if we are to act out a sex scene, that I will like very theatrically slap you from both sides over the ass, not really like in the sexual way, but more in the way that everybody around can see and they can react on it. And most of the girls have been very okay with it. But one was very much against it. As I learned later on, this girl was part of the LGBT community. She also had some bad experiences with men. So if I would do something like this without agreeing with her about it before, I would very badly cross her personal boundaries. What I'm trying to illustrate is that as a facilitator, you are guaranteeing the safety. And you should give also opportunity to players to make it more spicy for themselves. And still players are responsible for their actions. I have a little bit more stories ready for you. Maybe I can get to them later on, but for now, I will ask you again if you are having any questions to this safety area. And if not, then I will pass it to Simone, and Simone can talk about competencies. I will stop sharing.
Thank you, Vojtěch. Then I will start my sharing. Okay, everyone can see the slide. Good.
Yes.
Good. Then we are going to talk about competencies. How do we do it? My proposal is to have a small shared narration. So it will be kind of interactive story involving all of us. We are going to be adventurers as facilitators in the competencies realm. So let's start this small game. Feel free to participate, to join according to your chance. What do we need in order to play? Guidelines, a setting, and encounters. That will be provided by those slides, this presentation. The guidelines basically it means and how to deal with the story. The setting is the here and now, so our ambientation, our context. The encounters will be the challenges we'll be facing during our adventure. And if you feel like you need it to take some notes or something, you should have the most classical tool, which is paper, and you can also do it digitally on your netbook or notebook or whatever device you're using. So if everyone is ready, let's start. Guidelines. So we are discovering this world, and in order to discover a very complex and unfamiliar world, we need to go step by step. And step by step, we can try to master all the work. The guidelines or rules, they are also something very basic in this kind of games, because they provide like a fixed stable pattern, which is not, you can make contradiction about it. And these patterns helps the player, guide the player to approach the setting, that to interact with the other players and with the settings. So this will be a sort of guidelines how to proceed for you. And our guidelines will be these bubble scheme, which I drew after a consultation with Vojtěch, and it basically made out of bubbles. We could call it levels of the bubbles, and we are starting with a smaller one, the inner one, which is the role-play game. Then we go further with the live-action role-play games, which involve also a more deep involvement of the body and the act. It's a full act. Then we have something called working team, and then the educational frame as our final layer. And please try to keep in mind this bubble scheme, because it could really can help you to proceed from something which can be more simple and step by step dealing with something more complex, and not to start just from the whole picture, which could be very hard to grasp at the starting point. So then our guiding map, then the setting. Our setting will be a youth quest in a fantasy world. It's actually an activity for youngsters. It's called Dragon Egg. It will be probably also present, you will find in the manual. And what is it about? It's among youngsters from different countries, which are gathering for something as a youth encounter. In this youth encounter, they're taking part in a workshop about communication. And this activity will be the Dragon Egg. They're just going to find it, and we are going to be their facilitators. So how the activity works? The participants will be given some preset, already printed character cards, each belonging to a different fantasy race. And it can be creative, but for that we have elves, humans, dwarves, and hobbits, the most classical one, like from the Lord of the Rings, so that maybe everyone knows. And then they will be split into 4 fictions according to the role and to the character they receive, to their new identity, let's say. The 4 group have them to physically create their own villages using whatever material they have at their disposition, or whatever material we give them, we provide them with. After that, they are told the story about this powerful lady of the dragon, which is the ruler of their land, the 4 villages are staying, which rat will soon tear each of the 4 villages apart. Why? Because she held them responsible for stealing something, to have something very precious, a dragon egg. Then the only safe way, the only way out, I mean, for the villagers, is to willingly and accordingly choose one of the village to sacrifice, to offer as a sacrifice to the lady of the dragon. Then the other 3 villages will be. So that then will be 3 rounds. After the story is told, after the village are ready, there will be 3 rounds, each one made by a village council and a diplomatic phase. What does it mean? It means that every village will choose 2 representatives each round, and they will send it to one of the other villages to make consultation about the final decision. And then they have a second step in which they come back to the village. They a consultation among themselves into the village. After those 3 rounds, the Lady of the Dragon will come, will arrive finally, and ask for the 4 villages for the final joint answer. And if, of course, if there will be an agreement, the villages will be destroyed. Is there any questions so far?
Basically, at the end of the game, there will be only 1 village left standing.
Yes, but only, no, it can be 2 outcomes. If the village can agree on just 1 village to sacrifice, to offer in sacrifice, that will be the only 1 village destroyed. But
okay.
if they are not able to agree, to reach an agreement, a joint agreement, all the 4, all that will be destroyed.
Since there are 3 rounds, okay.
Yes, they have 3 rounds of time of contractations.
Okay. How much is 1 round?
We are not, I didn't include here the timing and the duration of each piece because it's not really, it's not that we are going to play this. We are the facilitator of these activities.
Okay.
So,
thanks.
Is it clear, Francesco? Okay, thank you.
How many persons is needed for the game?
This game has 4 villages, which needs to be needs to have at least 3 or 4. The minimum should be 4 participants for each village, so a total of 16 participants. It's very big activity. That's why the setting is a youth encounter.
Okay.
This activity is planned to involve a big number of participants. Is there any other question? Good. Then, the encounters. The encounters are the main competence you'll be facing and the related problem, the related issues. So following this guiding map, the bubble we just saw, a list of competence you might deal with will now be presented to you. And according to the settings and to the guiding map, your task will be to relate those competences to possible eventual aspects or issues you might eventually figure out for this activity. So the competences will be presented in sets. And for each set, I will leave you like 2 minutes, like 1-2 minutes to have a small reflection or take notes and to share it, to share your observation or anything. Via chat, you can activate your microphone and talk. For each set, you will also find funny how to improve box, which provide some tips or sources for boosting your character skills for those sets, of course. It may be a bit hard to grasp, so I would say let's go directly to the practical thing. This is the first set of competence we encounter. And according to our scheme, we are starting with role-play games, and we find the communication in the form of meaningful communication, with some other sub competencies, which we define as shaping the context, the ability of shaping the context, and those goes side by side. It's theatrical or improvisation skills, and the capacity of entertaining and involve. Then we have something very important related to communication, which is the empathy. Then we have, of course, resources and time management, self-awareness and confidence, and something about the group dynamics, which is related to something we call mediation skills. Now I will leave you just 1 minute to have a thought about it. And are you able to relate some of this competence to the activity we described before. So to relate some competence to some aspect of activities, or to some problems they might eventually come out during the activity. This is very much a work of imagination.
Can you repeat one more time?
The last sentence of
Yeah.
I just said that it may be a bit hard to figure it out, but yeah, it's mostly a work of imagination for us, because we need to imagine how the activity could develop. But
so in what context these competencies will occur?
Yeah, exactly. Using as example the previous activity, but yeah, I would say you can also be free to use whatever example you want if you have already experience in role play or LRPG game activities. In the while, in order to gain some bonus points, we would like to suggest to have some reading. There is also some very funny reading. It can be like leisure activities. There are the manuals from the most common and famous role-play games and ambientations. The already existing one, very famous, is Dungeons and Dragons. So there is the Dungeon Master's Guide. It's a manual. It's very nice, funny, with a lot of pictures and also useful tips for narrations and creating settings. There are others like World of Darkness, and I'm sure if you contact each one of us, you can get a lot of suggestions about literature, manuals, and also movies. Also, movies are really, as you saw, most of the races from this activity are taken from a movie or a book. And then also, like acting or theater courses are always very useful. Okay, if someone wants to add something about, want to say something about these competencies, shall wait some few seconds. Otherwise, we shall proceed to the next set of competencies. Good. So we have live action role play games. Second bubble, going further. We say it's a full acting, full body acting game. So, of course, we find artistic, technical, and digital competencies. I would like to leave you and to leave to your imagination to think about why those competencies can be useful for a live action role play game. And of course, in the bonus, you find again something that can help you, which is again artistical courses and workshop, as well as crafting. With crafting, we intend mainly handcrafting, which could involve any materials, from clothing to smithing to carpentering, anything that could be related to a world. Maybe it's fantastical or not. Experimenting with conferencing platforms like Zoom, like Teams, like this, because this is also something that can be used, that can be integrated with a role play, even with the live action role play. May be difficult or not, but it's something that can be done, and it's already being done. So also experimenting with the tools you can you have on these kind of softwares can also give you a nice idea and concepts. And then also photography and music and video making courses or workshop are really useful to develop such competencies. shall then wait just a few seconds to see if someone wants to say something. And then shall we proceed to the third set, and we will be discussing these together with the fourth. This is something we call working team and cooperating successfully in teams. It's how I name this competence. So we name this competence. If you have a better definition or expression, you're welcome. And I would not like to explain this, but I would like to go directly to the how to gain bonus points, and you can find youth camps, youth encounters. Why? Because they are usually those are good settings to experiment the self in teamwork, because usually you have widened teams in such a situation. Maybe you have project with partners and you are dealing with different youth workers, and it's not just you and maybe your usual paid colleagues, so you are more, and this can be really a good environment and situation where to be aware of what it means to work with other people, other colleagues with different competencies, with different abilities and skills and point of views also, and aims, and trying to still working on something together with a common aim. Also, I would like to say that experimenting teamwork as a player in a role-play game or in a live-action role-play game could be a nice way to experiment, to be aware of what working in team means. Because mainly all I'm not sure, but I don't think there are that many role-play games that you can play like as a standalone, unless we are talking about video games or something like this. Even escape room nowadays have like they are set to work on a party team, and the party, which is a team of players, is a concept which we find very, very often in all the role-plays and live-action role-plays games. So this is kind of the model of the teamwork, I would say, and can be a very funny way to experiment yourself, both in teamwork and both with these sort of games. Shall we proceed immediately to the edu game, which is somehow related, because probably most common situation where you find yourself working in a team is the educational frame. It's very difficult to find a private game session with more than one master narrator, etc. For the educational frame, we have the intercultural approach, because the international mobility it's a factor, is very constant in a lot of educational works nowadays. And even in the local, if you're working locally, high chance that you can get people from different cultures, and also not just from different cultures, but with all the differences that they will come with. So this kind of approach can be really something, even because sometimes the game itself are structured in a way to provide identities, fixed identities with fixed characteristics. So many times those activities are meant to create diversity in the game, and an approach to the a good approach to the diversity is fundamental, at least from the side of the facilitator. Then facilitating learning, which implies creating and maintaining a safe environment, designing programs, ability to appropriately open the session and reflect then upon it, and of course, embracing mistakes. Most of those points were already covered by Vojtěch in the previous session, like the safety, safe environment, and to make the planning and design programs, and also about the reflection. And then we have the evaluating practices, which was also covered by Vojtěch, but those are also competencies when we come to the educational layer, because the evaluation of the practice, of the methods, of the activities of our work is a way to improve, to leap apart what wasn't working or what can be made better, and to improve what is already working. Yes, it's like self-formation in a way. And to that, how to improve that, our suggestion is traveling and visiting different cultures is always something very, very, very helpful for the diversity approach. Also, you have literatures in the form of youth works manuals, the manual on the youth work. The most common are the Salto Youth, the Compass, but there are also more. And I heard that there will be one coming soon about role play activities, I think. And method and testing. It maybe sounds hard, complex, but this is a personal suggestion sometimes to try to design your own method, and testing and failing. It's a good way to start building your competencies and your skills. And with that, we come to the end of our adventure. I'm sorry if I took some minutes more. I will now stop the presentation, and I will leave the word to Vojtěch. If there is no question or no. Good.
Thank you very much, Simone. I'm going to share with you screen again, even though it's sharing just for the sake of my own pleasure, basically, because what I want to show you is, yeah, not my whole presentation, but the Google started to launch itself again. I want to show you almost the last slide. Yeah, which is this one. And the slide is about discussion, because this is a moment for you. If you are having any questions, please ask us, write them to the chat or anything. I have a feeling that I have been really rushing through this presentation, through this webinar. We are 15 minutes over the original plan. I have a feeling that I didn't manage to tell everything I wanted. There is really a lot of information in these webinars. So anyway, the next 15 minutes belongs to you. Any questions? Not first assignment yet. I'm having this problem when I'm sharing the screen. I cannot see the chat.
I will let you know if there is anything on the chat.
Okay. Then let's make a small brainstorm for the people at the screen. Please, each one of you, just write us to the chat one competence which you consider the most important for implementing LARP or RPG. One competence which is, in your opinion, the most important for facilitating and implementing LARP and RPG. I will stop sharing because I want to see the chat. Communication. Empathy. Mhm. Yeah, both of those are extremely important. Communication, first of all, already when you are explaining the rules of the RPG or LARP, so you are very clearly communicating what is happening. Actually, already before, when you are doing the preparation of the game and you are kicking out the trailer for the activity and you are inviting people, it's very important to know how to communicate properly, what is ahead of them. Empathy is very important when you are on the spot and you are dealing with a difficult situation. When you are having a proper empathy, you can support people in much better and more meaningful way. Also, it's very useful during reflection. I see here respect. Yeah, definitely. Everybody is equal and we should keep it in mind. On the spot, we are just having different role. You as a organizer and facilitator are only a human, just like everybody else, but of course it's your role to keep everything safe. Personal boundaries. Yeah, as mentioned during my presentation, first of all, you as a facilitator should have your own personal boundaries and you shouldn't let participants to step into them. You are still a human. It's also important to set up a safety zone for everybody and to let people discuss their own personal boundaries. It reminds me, when I was implementing LARP now in the Great Britain, it was the whole day LARP on a motif of the King Arthur. We had 40 players. What we did, we set up very common boundaries, which was no physical touch. And then we gathered all people in the circle and we let them announce if they want to, like every one of them say for themselves if they are no touch or if they are okay with some touch, and they specifically out loud said in front of everybody what is okay for them, what is not okay for them. It was working very nicely for me. Consent. Yes, consent also very important thing. I have another story to consent. That's from the time when I was a player. I have been playing this LARP about the family drama, and basically my character has been kind of cheating on his wife, and I was very much like I was thinking as an actor, as a player, if I should kiss this other person, my mistress from the game, and I was very much like open to it. But in the same time, I didn't check with her personal boundaries in advance. I didn't know if she would be okay with it, or if maybe she's not in a relationship and I wouldn't completely cross her boundaries, her partner boundaries. So I didn't do anything until the moment when she, and I completely didn't expect it, suddenly she kissed me, player as a player, not person as a person, but player as a player. So actually she crossed my boundaries, or let's say I was perfectly fine with it. It was all good. But that's an example of doing something without a consent. And yeah, in my case, it was fine, but let's imagine that I would have a girlfriend in that time, and then I would have to be explaining my girlfriend and somebody just kissed me. So yeah, it's good to have a consent. It's also good to give players a chance to make these agreements in between each other. Ability to improvise and be flexible. As a facilitator, if you are able to improvise, it's going to make your life much easier. Improvising, competence to improvise is something that can be learned and trained very easily. I highly invite you to go for some theater session, impro theater and similar things. It can help you a lot if you are into those things. It's not necessary, but it's helpful. Imagination. Imagination is very good for the players of LARP and role-playing games. If you are a tabletop game master, if you are a game master who is telling the story, imagination can definitely help you with crafting the very interesting scenario for the player. It can make it more intriguing for them. active listening, definitely very useful, especially during the reflection when you are reflecting upon the learning of the people. Personally, I believe that active listening is the most important skill for running a successful reflection.
May I add, this active listening, it's really worth to mention it, and maybe it could be paired with something like active observation, if we want to include also the non-verbal communication, which can be very important in those situations.
Francesco, do you have something to add to the discussion? Francesco is very experienced when it comes to using RPG and LARP for education.
Well, I think that all the skills and competences and the voices I'm reading in the chat are really useful, fundamentals, most of them. But the main point is, of course, there are everything is useful. I would also would add also to do some experience in LARP. Because even though it's not a proper competence, it's something that it really links all those skills, all those competences, and give you a lot of awareness about this field. And I think that even though put that somebody has all these skills, all these competences, but wouldn't be enough for probably for a person without experience to run a LARP, at least at the very first experience. And so I would just say that I would suggest you to jump in a LARP, to have an experience, to step forward, because this really gives you a completely different point of view regarding this.
Thank you, Francesco. Yes, you are raising a very important point. We have been talking about this, I believe, during the time we have been discussing manual. There was this question coming from the team: what skills do I need to have when I am to implement LARP or role-playing game? And we came to the conclusion that the only thing which you need is a willingness to do it. Basically, give it a shot, no matter what, experiment with it and see what is coming out of it. Because all these things which we mentioned, it's not only that you have these competencies before you are going to implement the LARP, but also it's going the opposite direction. Through implementing LARP, through implementing role-playing activities, you can actually learn these competencies. You can get better in those competencies. So invitation from our side is basically go for it and see what is bringing. Which is actually linking me to the assignment of the third webinar. I will share the screen again. The assignment for the webinar number 4 is to take this LARP or role-playing activities you have been preparing in the last 2 weeks and do it. Get a group of people, and with this group of people, play this short tabletop RPG or play this short LARP with them, and just to experience it for yourself. And then write a short report about the success you had. You don't have to do anything long, from 2 paragraphs to 1 page, just your experiences from the whole game. You can put there what you liked, you can put there what you think you could do better. We will evaluate it again and come back to it at the beginning of the next webinar. The next webinar will be delivered to you by Francesco and other colleagues from our team. And it will be on the topic how to do LARP and role-playing games online. How to play RPGs, tabletop RPGs online. I would also add, last time people have been asking about if you will get the PowerPoint presentation. So I'm sending you the PowerPoint presentation I have been using to the chat right now. I hope that you can see it. I will also add there the link for the assignment. So on this link, you can download the template and you can fill the template and you can do the assignment. There is also a link to our Facebook group. Inside of this secret Facebook group, you can be posting your assignments, you can be asking your questions. Last time, a lot of people have been asking about reading literature. And we said that it's very broad. If you have something specific, please ask us something specific. Basically, to give you some examples, if you want to get a specific tabletop RPG so you can learn the rules, you can just write us and then we can recommend you, for example, Lasers and Feelings, which is a rule for tabletop RPGs, which is having exactly 1 page. But we can also recommend you World of Darkness, which is rules for RPG, which are having 150 pages. Or we can give you Dungeons and Dragons, which is having, I don't know, 500 pages plus. The diversity is really big. Maybe you will be interested in the topic how to design LARP. So we can recommend you some presentation and some YouTube videos where it's explained how to actually do the designing part. And designing is a little bit different from playing and from facilitating. Here we are busy with the facilitating, but maybe you want to know how to actually create the game, and then we can give you recommendations. And so on and so on. There is a really broad scale of options. So I just invite you, if you have a question, put it to the Facebook group or write it to our email, to our contact email from the website, and we will answer you as soon as possible. And I think that's it from my side, fellas. Is there any last question? And team, is there anything else to add? Elias?
No, I don't think so. Just want to say that I'm going to send this last information also on your emails. You will receive the evaluation form, the voluntary homework. The next days you will also see on our website this webinar uploaded on YouTube. And yeah, you will also receive the link for our Facebook group in case you're not a member yet. That's it from me as well.
Then that's it, my friends. We are over for today, and I'm looking forward to see you in 2 weeks from now on. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye bye.
Bye.